The sleek silver spacecraft cut through the stillness of space, its surface reflecting the distant light of unfamiliar stars. Inside, tension crackled between the 4 crew members of the Zilorian expedition. Kara, the youngest scientist, stood at the viewport, her heart pounding in her chest. Her violet eyes locked onto the strange blue-green planet coming into view. Earth. Unlike the barren, crystalline landscapes of their home planet, Zilora, Earth seemed wild, alive, and unpredictable. Final descent sequence initiated, announced Rhina, the ship's pilot, her multi-limbed form tapping at the console. The ship's engines whirred softly, and Kara's exoskeleton clicked with anticipation. Her role as the team's xenobiologist meant this mission was critical. Chance to study the strange, soft-bodied creatures that inhabited this alien world. Ready for atmospheric entry, Kara's voice echoed in her helmet as she fastened her restraints. The ship jolted as it breached Earth's atmosphere, fiery streaks licking the hull as they descended through clouds and turbulent winds. With practiced ease, Rhina guided the vessel toward a landing spot, a dense forest near what appeared to be a human settlement. Though safely out of sight, Kara exchanged a glance with Nira, the team's geologist. "I can't believe we're here," she whispered, her iridescent exoskeleton shimmering under the ship's light. Nira smirked, her sharp mandibles clicking. "Just stay focused. We're here to observe, not interact." The ship landed with a soft thud in the clearing, the towering trees swaying gently around them. As the hatch opened, a new world greeted them, the fresh scent of Earth's atmosphere, the cacophony of distant animals, and the lush green vegetation starkly different from their crystalline deserts. Kara was the first to step out, her boots sinking slightly into the soft soil. She inhaled deeply through her helmet's filters, her antennae twitching at the unfamiliar sensations. This planet, it's so alive. Rhina's voice broke through the quiet awe. "Let's move quickly. We need to gather samples and remain undetected." But Kara's eyes wandered to the horizon, where something moved. She focused her scanner and saw them. Humans, only a short distance away, splashing in a body of water. Her heart skipped a beat. "There they are," she murmured, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Kara couldn't tear her gaze away from the humans. They were unlike anything she had ever studied. Their bodies were soft, unarmored, and strangely fluid in their movements. How could they survive in a world so filled with dangers? They had no visible protection, no exoskeleton, no hard shells. Their skin was bare, revealing muscles that flexed and shifted as they moved through the water. "What are they doing?" Kara whispered, her scientific curiosity battling with the sense of caution drilled into her by the mission's protocols. "They're exposed, vulnerable," Nira added, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "I can't believe they've evolved to survive like this." Rhina, more pragmatic, cautioned, "We've come to observe, not interfere. Let's stick to the mission." But Kara's mind was racing. These creatures were fascinating, and her instinct as a scientist told her there was more to learn by getting closer. She activated her suit's cloaking device, the shimmering field wrapping her form in near invisibility. "I'm going to take a closer look," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Kara, wait," Nira hissed, but it was too late. Moving carefully through the underbrush, Kara approached the lake. The humans were laughing, their faces so expressive, filled with emotions she couldn't quite understand. She noticed one human in particular, a male, standing on the shore. His skin was glistening with water, his dark hair clinging to his face. Every movement seemed impossibly fluid without the support of an exoskeleton. She was close enough now to hear them speak, though their language was still alien to her ears. Her translator hummed as it tried to make sense of the sounds, but it struggled. The humans seemed so fragile. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed as Kara stepped on a fallen branch. The human male's head snapped in her direction, eyes narrowing as he peered into the shadows. "Hello," he called, his voice uncertain but calm. Kara froze, her breath catching in her throat. She had been trained for this moment. First contact with an intelligent alien species. But now that it was happening, fear gripped her. What if she had compromised the mission? What if she had endangered them all? The human male took a cautious step toward the tree line. His green eyes swept the area, searching for the source of the noise. Kara held her breath, her cloaking device flickering slightly as the human drew nearer. For a moment, it seemed as though he might turn back, but then he called out again. "I know you're there. I'm not going to hurt you." Kara's heart pounded in her chest. The translator struggled with his words, but the message was clear. He was aware of her presence. Before she could stop herself, Kara deactivated her cloaking field. The human gasped, stumbling backward in shock. His eyes widened as he took in her alien form, her gleaming exoskeleton, her elongated limbs, and the shimmering antennae that twitched nervously atop her head. You're real," he whispered, awe flooding his voice. "An alien." Kara hesitated. This was not how the mission was supposed to go. They were supposed to remain hidden, to observe from a distance. But now, she had been seen. The human was looking at her with a mixture of fear and fascination, his hands raised in a gesture that she assumed was meant to show he wasn't a threat. "My name is Kara," she said finally, her voice soft through the translator. "I'm Ethan," the human replied, his voice steadying. "I'm a biologist, just like you, I think." Kara tilted her head, her antennae twitching in surprise. Could this fragile, soft-bodied creature really be a scientist? There was so much about these humans that didn't make sense to her. "We study life, too," Kara replied cautiously. "You're very different from what we expected." Ethan laughed softly, the sound rich and full of an emotion she couldn't quite place. "I could say the same about you." Kara's mind raced as she processed this unexpected turn of events. She had made contact with a human, something they had been expressly forbidden to do. And yet, this human seemed curious, not dangerous. Ethan's eyes sparkled with excitement, and there was no sign of hostility. I need to go," Kara stammered, her mission parameters flashing in her mind. She couldn't stay here, couldn't risk more exposure. "Wait," Ethan said, his voice softening. "I'm not going to tell anyone. Please, just give me a chance to understand. This is too important to ignore." Kara hesitated, torn between her duty and the overwhelming curiosity burning inside her. Could this human truly help them understand Earth better? Could he offer insights they hadn't considered? "I'll meet you again," Kara said quickly, the decision made in the heat of the moment. "Tomorrow at sunset, here, but you must come alone." Ethan nodded eagerly, his face breaking into a wide grin. "I promise. I'll be here." As Kara turned and disappeared into the shadows of the forest, her mind buzzed with questions. She had broken protocol, but something told her this was just the beginning. Kara's thoughts raced as she hurried back to the ship, her cloaking device re-engaged to keep her hidden. She had just broken one of the fundamental rules of the mission: remain undetected. As she approached the ship, the forest canopy thinning out above her, she could already see the faint glow of the vessel. Her team was waiting. The airlock hissed open, and Nira stood at the entrance, her antennae stiff with concern. "What were you thinking, Kara? We're supposed to observe, not interact." Her voice was sharp, echoing in Kara's helmet as she stepped into the ship's sterile interior. "I had no choice," Kara replied, her voice shaky but determined. "The human saw me. It wasn't safe to retreat without being noticed further. But there's more. He's a scientist like us." "Biologist?" Nira's mandibles clicked in irritation, and Rhina turned in her seat from the ship's control console. "That doesn't matter. You've risked the entire mission by revealing yourself." Kara clenched her fists, her exoskeleton plates flexing. "But what if it's an opportunity? We've learned more from that brief encounter than we could have by just watching from afar. This human wants to help us understand Earth. Nira crossed her arms, the tips of her claws tapping against her armored skin. And what makes you think we can trust him? Humans are unpredictable. Kara paused. I don't know, but we came here to learn, to explore. We can't do that if we're hiding in the shadows the entire time. Rhina turned her large eyes toward the screen displaying a holographic map of the surrounding area. What's done is done. We'll need to report this breach to command, but I'm not ready to leave yet. We'll see how this plays out. However, Kara, you're responsible for ensuring that human doesn't compromise our mission. Kara nodded, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. She had taken a dangerous gamble, and the next meeting with Ethan would be critical. If she was wrong about him, everything they had worked for could be lost. The next day passed in a blur. Kara busied herself analyzing the data they had gathered, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan. She replayed their brief conversation in her mind over and over, wondering if she had made the right decision. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the forest, Kara prepared for her return to the lakeside. Are you sure about this? Nira asked, her voice tinged with skepticism as Kara stepped toward the airlock once more. No, Kara admitted, but I have to try. As she made her way through the forest, the night sounds of Earth surrounded her, the chirping of insects, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of animals. The atmosphere was alive in a way that Silora could never be. She reached the lakeside just as the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Ethan was there, waiting as he had promised. He stood near the water's edge, his hands in his pockets, looking both nervous and excited. When he saw Kara emerge from the trees, his face lit up with a mixture of relief and wonder. You came, he said, his voice soft but filled with anticipation. I told you I would, Kara replied, stepping closer but keeping a cautious distance. Ethan sat down on a large rock by the water, gesturing for Kara to join him. I have been thinking about this all day. I've got so many questions, but I don't want to overwhelm you. Kara studied him, her antennae twitching slightly. His posture was relaxed, his voice calm, and there was no sign of deception. I'll answer what I can, she said, sitting carefully on a nearby rock, her body still tense with uncertainty. Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes flickering with curiosity. What are you doing here? I mean, why Earth? Why now? Kara hesitated. We're explorers, scientists like you. We came to study your planet and its life forms, but from a distance. We didn't plan on being seen. Well, you've been doing a great job of staying hidden, until now, Ethan said with a small smile. I had no idea aliens were out here in our forests. Kara's gaze softened slightly. Your species is different from what we expected. Fragile, yet you've thrived. We wanted to understand how. Ethan chuckled softly, looking down at his hands. Fragile. I guess compared to you, we are. But we're resilient in our own way. Silence fell between them as the sky darkened, stars beginning to twinkle above. Kara found herself studying Ethan more closely now. His skin, the way it reflected the fading light, the softness of his features. Everything about him seemed so strange, yet there was a certain strength in the way he carried himself. You risked a lot by meeting me, Ethan said suddenly, breaking the quiet. Aren't you worried about what might happen? I am, Kara admitted. But there's so much we can learn from each other. I couldn't ignore that chance. Ethan nodded, his expression serious. I feel the same. There's so much we don't know about the universe. And now, knowing you're out there, it changes everything. Kara shifted uncomfortably, her mind torn between her duty and the growing connection she felt with this human. I need to ask you something, Ethan. If anyone found out about this, us, would you tell them? Ethan looked up, his green eyes meeting hers. No, I won't say anything. This is too important to mess up. I won't betray your trust. Kara's heart thudded in her chest. She wanted to believe him, but trust was not easily given. I hope you mean that, she said softly. I do, Ethan replied, his voice steady. We can learn so much from each other, Kara. I won't let anything get in the way of that. As they sat there under the stars, surrounded by the quiet sounds of the earth, Kara realized that something had shifted. She had crossed a line, but in doing so, she had opened the door to possibilities neither of them could have imagined. The next few days passed quickly, with Kara and Ethan meeting at the lake each evening. Their conversations grew deeper, more personal, as they shared their knowledge of their respective worlds. Ethan was fascinated by the technology of Zalora, while Kara found herself intrigued by the complexities of human culture and biology. Ethan explained how humans had adapted to countless environments, surviving in conditions that seemed impossible to Kara. He spoke of their resilience, their creativity, and their endless drive to explore the unknown. Kara, in turn, shared the Zalorian methods of scientific discovery, their advancements in space travel, and their deep connection to their home planet's natural resources. As they exchanged ideas, they both realized how much their species had in common despite their vast differences. One evening, as they sat by the lake under the light of a full moon, Ethan looked at Kara with a serious expression. You've changed the way I see everything, he said quietly. Knowing that there are others out there, it makes me realize how small we are, but also how much potential we have. Kara nodded, her antennae twitching in agreement. You humans are remarkable in your own way. We never expected to find such intelligence, such ingenuity in a species so physically different from us. Ethan smiled, but his expression quickly grew somber. But we can't keep meeting like this forever, can we? Sooner or later, someone's going to find out. Kara's heart sank at the truth of his words. Their meetings had been a dangerous gamble, and she knew it couldn't last indefinitely. You're right, she said softly. But I don't want this to end. Ethan reached out, hesitating for a moment before his hand lightly touched her armored arm. Maybe it doesn't have to, he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. We can find a way to keep learning from each other. We can do this, Kara. Together. Kara felt a surge of hope, something she hadn't expected to feel when she first stepped foot on this strange planet. Maybe we can, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As the stars shone brightly above them, Kara realized that they had formed something far more significant than just a meeting of minds. They had forged a new alliance, one that could change everything. The alliance between Kara and Ethan continued in secret, their nightly meetings by the lake growing more frequent. As Kara shared more about Zalora and their advanced knowledge of space and biology, Ethan revealed the depth of human ingenuity and the resilience that had allowed his species to survive on Earth despite their fragility. But with each meeting, the stakes grew higher. Kara knew that her team would soon begin questioning her prolonged absences, and Ethan worried that someone from his research team or the government might stumble upon their secret. The tension hung between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that their time might be running out. One evening, as they sat by the water under a crescent moon, Kara's communicator buzzed urgently in her ear. Her team, who usually gave her privacy during her excursions, was calling her back to the ship. Kara, return immediately. There's something you need to see. Nira's voice crackled, filled with tension. Kara's antennae twitched. Nira's tone was serious, more than just the usual concern. Something had happened. I have to go, she told Ethan, standing up abruptly. Ethan frowned, sensing her unease. Is everything all right? I'm not sure, Kara replied, but I'll come back as soon as I can. Ethan watched as Kara disappeared into the shadows of the forest, worry etching his features. He had grown used to their routine, but now he feared that whatever had summoned her might change everything. When Kara returned to the ship, Nira and Rhina were waiting, their expressions grim. What's going on? Kara asked, stepping into the ship's dimly lit control room. Nira gestured to the holographic display in the center of the room. We've detected something. Unusual activity in the region where the humans have built their settlements. Kara's heart raced. What kind of activity? Human military movement, Rhina said, her voice calm but serious. They've mobilized troops, and they seem to be converging on this area. Kara's mind spun. How could this be happening? Could Ethan's presence here have somehow attracted attention? Are they aware of us? She asked, dreading the answer. Nira shook her head. It's unclear, but we can't rule out the possibility that our presence has been detected. The humans may be investigating anomalies in the area. Either way, it's a risk we can't afford. Kara's stomach churned. This was exactly what they had feared. Breach of secrecy, the exposure of their mission. What do? We need to leave, Rhina said firmly. Pack up the ship, gather all the data we've collected, and prepare for an immediate departure. We can't stay here if there's a chance we've been compromised. Kara's heart sank. Leaving now would mean abandoning everything they had worked for, and worse, it would mean severing her connection with Ethan. But what if they're not looking for us? What if it's just a coincidence? Rhina's mandibles clicked in frustration. We can't take that risk, Kara. This mission was supposed to be covered, and now we're dangerously close to being discovered. Nira placed a hand on Kara's shoulder, her voice softer but no less firm. You know what's at stake here. We've learned so much, but if we're caught, everything we've done could be for nothing. We have to leave, and we have to leave now. Kara swallowed hard, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She knew they were right. The mission came first, and they couldn't jeopardize everything for the sake of curiosity or personal connection. But leaving Ethan, leaving without saying goodbye, felt wrong. She couldn't just vanish without explaining. I need a few minutes, Kara said, her voice quiet but resolute. Rhina frowned. We don't have time for... Please, Kara interrupted, her voice firm. Just a few minutes. Nira and Rhina exchanged glances, but after a moment, Nira nodded. Go. But be quick. Without another word, Kara turned and dashed out of the ship, racing back through the forest to the lakeside. She arrived out of breath. Her thoughts jumbled as she searched for Ethan. He was there, waiting as always, but the look on his face told her he knew something was wrong. What's happening? Ethan asked as she approached, his voice laced with concern. Kara hesitated, unsure of how to explain. We have to leave, Ethan. There's been some kind of human military movement in the area. My team thinks we've been detected, and they want to evacuate. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, leave? As in, you're going back to your planet? Kara nodded, her throat tight. Yes, we can't stay if there's a risk of being discovered. Ethan took a step forward, his hands clenched at his sides. No, there has to be another way. You can't just leave like this. Kara looked at him, her heart aching with the weight of the moment. I don't have a choice. If we're caught, everything we've done here will be exposed. It's too dangerous. Ethan's expression was pained. But we've only just started. There's so much we can learn from each other, so much we can discover together. You can't just give up on that. Kara shook her head, frustration and sadness swirling inside her. I don't want to leave, Ethan. But my people, we have to protect ourselves. If we're found, it could lead to conflict, maybe even war. We came here to learn, not to start something we can't control. Ethan's gaze softened, and he took another step toward her, his voice quieter now. Kara, I understand the risks, but there has to be a way for us to stay in contact, to keep learning. This can't be the end. Kara's antennae twitched as she considered his words. Could there be a way? Something that wouldn't endanger her people, but would allow them to continue their alliance. I'll talk to my team, she said finally. Maybe there's a way we can leave without cutting off all communication. I don't know, but I'll try. Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly, and he nodded. That's all I can ask." Kara reached out, her hand hovering just above his, the space between them filled with unspoken emotions. "I have to go now, but I'll do everything I can to make sure this isn't the last time we speak." Ethan smiled faintly, though sadness still clouded his eyes. "Thank you, Kara. I'll be waiting." With a final lingering glance, Kara turned and disappeared into the trees, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she might never see Ethan again. But as she made her way back to the ship, a flicker of hope remained. Perhaps in the vastness of the universe, they would find a way to bridge the distance between their worlds. Back aboard the ship, Kara found Nira and Rhina preparing for takeoff. The engines hummed with energy as the ship's systems powered up. The time to leave was rapidly approaching. "We're ready to go," Rhina announced, her voice flat. "Did you say your goodbyes?" Kara hesitated, glancing at the ship's control panel. "I think there might be another option," she said cautiously. Nira's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "We don't have to cut off all contact," Kara explained. "There are ways to stay hidden while still maintaining a line of communication. It's risky, but I think it's possible." Rhina frowned, her claws tapping impatiently. "That's a huge gamble, Kara. What makes you think we can trust this human to keep our secret?" Kara met her gaze steadily. "Because I've seen enough of them to know that they're not all as unpredictable as we feared. This human, even, he wants to learn from us, just like we want to learn from them. If we cut ties completely, we lose the chance to understand each other better." Nira's mandibles clicked in thought, and she exchanged a glance with Rhina. After a long pause, Nira sighed. "It's a dangerous move, but perhaps you're right. If we want to learn, we can't keep hiding forever." Rhina folded her arms but finally nodded. "Fine. But the moment things get out of hand, we're leaving for good." "Understood." Kara nodded gratefully. "Understood." As the ship lifted off from the forest clearing, Kara stared out the viewport, watching the trees shrink below them. Somewhere down there, Ethan was waiting. And though the future was uncertain, she knew that this was not the end. It was only the beginning of something far greater than either of them could have imagined. As the Zilorian starship ascended through Earth's atmosphere, Kara stood by the viewport, her gaze locked on the shrinking landscape below. The vast expanse of green forests and winding rivers slowly gave way to the blue oceans and swirling clouds. Somewhere down there, Ethan was waiting. Unaware that this might be the last time she saw Earth, the ship rumbled gently as it breached the upper atmosphere, the stars once again becoming visible through the viewport. Kara's thoughts were consumed by the events of the past few days. The connection she had formed with Ethan felt unprecedented, but the weight of her responsibilities to her species bore down heavily on her. They had come to Earth to observe, to learn, but now they were leaving without fully understanding the humans they had studied. "Kara," Nira's voice came softly from behind, breaking her reverie. "Are you sure about this? We're taking a significant risk by allowing any contact to continue." Kara turned to face her colleague, her antennae twitching with uncertainty. "I'm not sure about anything, Nira. But I know that cutting all ties now would mean losing the most valuable opportunity we had since arriving here. Ethan represents a part of humanity we didn't expect, one that could help bridge the gap between our species." Nira's mandibles clicked softly as she considered Kara's words. "We've always been cautious, perhaps too cautious, but it's unprecedented. I've never seen a human up close, yet you've made contact with one. It changes everything." Kara nodded, feeling the weight of Nira's words. "We've learned more in these last few days than we ever could have from a distance. Ethan is curious, intelligent, and he wants to help. I don't believe he would betray us." Rhina, who had been monitoring the ship's systems from the control console, turned her chair to face them. "Kara, if we're going to do this, we need a clear plan. The longer we stay in contact with this human, the greater the risk of exposure. How do you propose we keep this communication secure?" Kara paused, thinking carefully. We could use encrypted transmissions, untraceable signals that wouldn't draw attention from any human communication systems. We can choose specific times and places to exchange information, where it's least likely to be detected. And we can limit the frequency of contact. It's not perfect, but it's a way to keep learning without fully cutting ties. Rhina sighed, her arms folding across her chest. It's risky. If anything goes wrong, we'll have to abandon the mission entirely and leave Earth for good. I understand, Kara replied firmly, but I believe it's worth the risk. Nira, after a moment of thought, nodded in agreement. Very well, we'll give it a trial period, but we have to be prepared to pull out at any moment. Kara felt a wave of relief wash over her, though the uncertainty of what lay ahead still gnawed at her. She turned back to the viewport, watching as the ship leveled off into a stable orbit around Earth. The planet gleamed below, its beauty undeniable from this distance. Yet Kara's thoughts remained grounded, lingering with Ethan. Days passed as the Zilorian team prepared their encrypted communication system. Kara worked closely with Rhina to ensure that their transmissions would be virtually undetectable, and they chose a remote location on Earth where Ethan could receive their messages without drawing unwanted attention. The time had come to test whether their connection could survive under these new, more covert conditions. Kara stood by the ship's console, her fingers hovering over the keys as she prepared to send the first encrypted message to Ethan. It was short, simple, and to the point. We are safe. Communication will continue, but with caution. Await instructions for our next contact. Kara. She pressed send and held her breath, waiting for the transmission to complete. The message was routed through layers of encryption, bouncing across various satellite systems and back, hidden within Earth's own communication networks. If all went according to plan, Ethan would receive it within the hour. After what felt like an eternity, Rhina confirmed the successful transmission. It's been sent. Now we wait. Kara exhaled slowly, feeling both nervous and excited. It wasn't the same as meeting Ethan face to face, but it was something. She had made a promise, and now there was a chance to keep it. Several hours later, a soft beep echoed through the control room. An incoming message. Kara's heart raced as she opened the encrypted channel. Message received. I'm here, waiting for your next instructions. Ethan. Kara couldn't help but smile. Against all odds, they had managed to maintain their connection. Over the next few days, their communications grew more frequent, though always brief and precise. Ethan provided updates on Earth's political climate, scientific discoveries, and any movements that might indicate a threat to the Zilorians' presence. In return, Kara shared information about Zilora, its technology, and its people, though she was careful never to reveal too much. The bond between them, though now reduced to digital messages, continued to grow. Each communication was a reminder that despite the distance between their species, there was something deeply shared. Mutual desire to understand and learn from one another. But as weeks passed, Kara began to notice subtle changes in Ethan's messages. His tone, once excited and eager, had grown more cautious, even anxious. He mentioned increased military activity near his research facility and hinted at growing suspicions among his colleagues about strange occurrences in the area. One evening, after receiving a particularly cryptic message, Kara felt a cold dread settle in her chest. Ethan's words were brief, almost as if he was afraid of saying too much. They're looking for something. Be careful. We'll explain more soon. Kara's antennae twitched with alarm. Had their transmissions been detected? Had Ethan's involvement raised suspicions among his peers? She brought the message to Nira and Rhina, who were equally concerned. We've been careful, but it's possible they've picked up on something, Nira said, her voice tense. We need to consider the possibility that our presence is no longer a secret, Rhina added. If they're actively searching for us, we may need to evacuate. Kara's stomach churned at the thought. She had known from the beginning that this mission was dangerous, but she hadn't anticipated how quickly the situation might spiral out of control. And worse, if Ethan was in danger because of their contact. She couldn't bear the thought of what might happen to him. "We need to find out more," Kara said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "I'll send Ethan a message and ask for details." Nira nodded, though her expression remained grim. "But if there's any indication that we've been compromised, we're leaving. No more risks." Kara returned to the control panel and typed out her message, her fingers shaking slightly as she pressed send. "What do they know? Are you in danger? We may need to cut contact." The minutes that followed were agonizing. Kara stared at the console, waiting for Ethan's reply. The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, the console beeped with an incoming message. Kara opened it immediately, her eyes scanning the words. "I'm okay for now, but they're getting close. I'll send details soon. Be careful." Kara's heart sank. The situation was more serious than she had realized. She looked up at Nira and Rhina, her voice heavy with dread. "We may not have much time left." The Silurian starship hummed with tense activity as Kara, Nira, and Rhina gathered to assess the situation. The messages from Ethan had been growing increasingly worrisome, and now they had to face the grim reality. The human military was closing in. What had begun as a covert mission to study Earth's life forms was spiraling into something far more dangerous. Kara's hands shook as she gripped the console, replaying Ethan's message in her mind. "They're getting close. Be careful." She had known the risks, but she hadn't expected them to escalate so quickly. Rhina's voice cut through the silence, sharp and commanding. "We need to make a decision. If they're truly closing in on us, we can't afford to wait any longer. We either evacuate now or take the risk of being found." Kara turned to Nira, whose usually calm demeanor was clouded with concern. "What do you think?" Kara asked quietly. Nira's antennae twitched as she considered their options. "Our mission has always been about gathering knowledge, but if the humans are actively searching for us, we've lost the advantage. We're no longer observers. We're potential targets. The safest course is to leave immediately." Kara swallowed hard, the weight of her personal connection with Ethan pressing down on her. She couldn't just leave him behind, not after everything they had shared. But she also knew that staying put could put both her team and Ethan in grave danger. "What about Ethan?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been helping us. He's put himself at risk because of me." Nira's gaze softened, but her response was firm. "You knew the risks when you made contact, Kara. We all did, but we can't jeopardize the entire mission for one human." Kara clenched her fists, her heart's pounding with conflict. Ethan had become more than just a subject of study. He had become a friend, perhaps even something more. She had to warn him, had to find a way to protect him without compromising her team's safety. "I need to send him one last message," Kara said, her voice filled with determination. "I owe him that much." Rhina hesitated, glancing at Nira before nodding slowly. "All right. But after that, we're cutting all contact. We'll prepare for evacuation immediately." Kara quickly moved to the console and typed out a final message to Ethan, her fingers flying over the keys. "Ethan, it's not safe for us to stay. We're leaving. Please keep yourself safe. I'll never forget what we've learned together. Stay hidden, and don't let them find you. Kara." She hit send and exhaled deeply, hoping that Ethan would receive the message before it was too late. Back on Earth, Ethan stared at his computer screen, his eyes scanning Kara's message with growing alarm. The situation had deteriorated faster than he had expected. For weeks he had kept his contact with Kara hidden, carefully masking their encrypted transmissions, and ensuring that no one in his research facility could detect the signals. But now, the military presence in the area had become undeniable, and it was clear they were searching for something, or someone. Ethan's mind raced as he considered his options. He couldn't just let Kara leave without helping her. She and her team had come here in peace, only to be threatened by human interference. He had to do something, but what? An idea formed in his mind, one that was as dangerous as it was bold. He knew that the military was conducting aerial scans of the region, searching for any signs of unusual activity. If he could create a distraction, something to draw their attention away from Kara's location, she might have enough time to escape undetected. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he hurriedly gathered supplies from his lab. He packed a small bag with electronics and a portable drone, something he had modified for his personal research. It wasn't much, but it might be enough to create a false signal and lead the military on a wild goose chase. He typed out a quick reply to Kara. "I have a plan to buy you time. Don't worry about me. Just get to safety." With that, he grabbed his bag and slipped out of the lab, careful to avoid the watchful eyes of his colleagues. The night air was cool and crisp as he made his way toward the edge of the forest. His heart raced with both fear and excitement. This was the only way he could repay Kara for trusting him, for giving him a glimpse into a universe far greater than he had ever imagined. Kara received Ethan's message just as Rhina and Nira were finalizing the ship's evacuation procedures. Her Antony twitched nervously as she read his words. "I have a plan to buy you time." Her heart sank. Ethan was putting himself in danger to protect them. "What is it?" Nira asked, noticing Kara's troubled expression. Kara handed her the communicator, and Nira quickly scanned the message. "He's creating a distraction," she said, her tone a mixture of surprise and concern. Rhina frowned, her claws tapping against the console. "That's reckless. If he gets caught—" "I know," Kara interrupted, her voice tight with emotion. "But he's doing it for us. If he can keep the military off our trail long enough, we might have a chance to escape." Nira's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "We'll need to move fast. Once the distraction is in place, we'll only have a small window to leave before they figure out what's really happening." Kara nodded, her mind spinning with worry for Ethan. She trusted him, but the thought of him being caught, or worse, because of her, was unbearable. Still, she had no choice but to rely on his plan. The clock was ticking, and their only option was to escape while they still could. As the ship's engines roared to life, Rhina began scanning the area for any signs of incoming military forces. "I'm not seeing anything yet," she reported, her eyes focused on the holographic display. "But if Ethan's plan works, we should see a spike in activity soon." Minutes passed in tense silence, the ship's crew readying themselves for a swift departure. Kara's eyes remained glued to the communicator, waiting for any word from Ethan. And then, just as she was about to lose hope, Rhina's voice cut through the quiet. "There!" A signal. "Military aircraft moving toward the northern sector," Rhina said, her voice filled with urgency. "Ethan's done it. They're heading away from us." Kara's heart pounded in her chest. Ethan's plan had worked. The military was being drawn away from their location, giving them the precious time they needed to escape. "We're leaving," Rhina announced, her hands flying over the controls as the ship began to lift off. The engines hummed with power, and within moments, the Zilorian starship rose into the sky, leaving the dense forest behind. Kara watched through the viewport as the ground grew smaller beneath them. Relief flooded her, but it was mixed with a deep sense of sorrow. She had no way of knowing what would happen to Ethan now. Had he escaped? Would he be safe? As they broke through the atmosphere and entered the cold void of space, Kara turned away from the viewport, her heart heavy. She had done what she needed to do for her team. But at what cost? Days passed as the Zilorian starship traveled through the dark expanse of space, putting as much distance between themselves and Earth as possible. Kara spent much of her time in quiet reflection, her thoughts constantly returning to Ethan. His bravery, his willingness to help despite the risks, those memories lingered in her mind like an unfinished story. But even in the vast silence of space, Kara knew that their story wasn't truly over. She had left Earth, but the connection she had formed with Ethan had changed her, and perhaps it had changed him too. Despite the uncertainty, she held onto a fragile hope that one day their paths might cross again. Nira approached her one evening as she sat by the viewport, gazing out at the stars. "We made it," Nira said quietly, her tone gentle. Kara nodded, though her heart felt heavy. "We did. But I can't stop thinking about Ethan. I don't know if he's safe, or if he was caught because of me." Nira placed a hand on her shoulder. "He made his choice, Kara. He wanted to help us, and he knew the risks. But we have to trust that he's resourceful, just like you believed he would be." Kara offered a faint smile. "I hope you're right." As the stars twinkled beyond the viewport, a soft beep echoed from the ship's console. An incoming transmission. Kara's antennae twitched as she moved toward the console, her heart racing. She opened the encrypted message, her breath catching in her throat as she read the words on the screen. "I'm safe. Thank you for everything. We'll meet again. Ethan." A smile spread across Kara's face, relief flooding her. Ethan was safe. He had made it. As she stared at the message, a renewed sense of hope filled her. Their journey wasn't over. Far from it. Somewhere out there, across the stars, Ethan was waiting, and Kara knew that one day they would find each other again. For now, their story would continue, unseen, but never forgotten.